today that includes student activists, documentary filmmakers, and people that are working in different areas of this same kind of meltdown that we are dealing with. My name's Deborah Scott, and Chris Nicolai and I are putting together a documentary called Junked, the trashing of higher ed in America. If you're interested in seeing clips as we upload them, you can go to Chris's website. It's 2255films.com. I have the website junkedrebellion.com, and I also blog as the homeless adjunct, and that is at junkedrebellion.wordpress.com. We also have somebody here that's going to be talking about Default, the student loan documentary, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the New Faculty Majority, which is a national organization that has formed in order to address some of the issues that are specifically issues for faculty, but directly related to issues of students. And then finally, we have another website I wanted you to be aware of, edudebtorsunion.org, and that is Monica Johnson's own website. I think what we're going to do is start talking from the student perspective first. So we're going to talk first, or hear what Brianne Murphy has to say. Brianne is a student at Temple University. She's an activist and an organizer there. She's one of the main movers behind M1C, so you'll explain that a little bit. And there's been a lot going on at Temple University. It's been sort of a hotbed these days of all kinds of stress and misery. So I think it's probably a good place for us to start the conversation.
Okay. We need the group and initiative to expand organically, which, you know, often when you're dreaming big can be kind of difficult to do and to remind yourself of. But in the spirit of this, this network and this growth, we held a regional conference on January 21st of this year that invited other Philadelphian schools and other schools of the region to attend. And from this meeting, Deborah referenced M1C. We formed the March 1st Coalition that rallied around the National Day of Action for Education. So what happened was we decided to form an action that would be a citywide walkout for education. And at this conference, we listed demands, like a statement of principle, a statement of grievances that we could use within this network to show the organization and the cross-campus initiatives that were happening. And in this, we demand just and transparent financial practices, full forgiveness of student loan debt, transparency and democratic input, and really trying to brainstorm what were all these issues that we wanted to talk about. Because as I referenced before, on a campus setting, you have a lot of different student groups with a lot of different energies that's put into different avenues. And so what we're kind of hoping to function as is a basis of say SJP is having an action on April 16th for a demonstration for justice in Palestine. And so you have this reference point where we can begin to kind of navigate and shift to figuring out how to actually stand in solidarity with each other and what that actually means.
I have gone on a couple political fasts. The first was about Sudan for 12 days outside the White House back in 2005, and the next was in 2009 for 15 days after I came back from Honduras following the coup there. I have worked in politics and some political campaigns. I did work for President Obama's campaign as a field staffer, and I worked on Joe Sestak's campaign in 2010. I'm running for U.S. Congress. I'm a write-in candidate because I got thrown off the ballot. Basically, the person I was running against, she challenged my petitions, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to withstand the challenge or not. But after going to court and her threatening to make me pay her legal fees, ultimately we decided it made more sense rather than face personal financial ruin to get out of the courts and just go as a write-in. But I actually had a fundraiser yesterday with Joe Sestak, who was kind enough to come and support me on the campaign, which was pretty amazing for him to go out on a limb like that. I am an activist and an organizer primarily. The last job I had was as a legislative assistant to a state representative last year. I did did Occupy and that job for about 6 weeks overlapping before I decided to resign from that job and pursue organizing full time, and we'll see how long the money lasts. Yeah, Occupy Philly, Deborah mentioned it a little bit. Our encampment outside of City Hall was a really amazing place, like so many of the encampments that still exist around the country. We had a library, we had a 24-hour medic team, 24-hour safety and security team. We had a food committee that served 1,500 meals a day. We had counselors and mental health advocates. It was a really amazing community that was built there. There were teach-ins all the time. And after the eviction, we started looking for ways to harness that same energy that existed. We realized that there are people who are willing to give of themselves as volunteers, even 24 hours a day. I've been thinking about the concept of a free university for a long time. I actually almost went over to Amsterdam to study at the Free University of Amsterdam there. But the free university concept from the 60s is something that we were really interested in seeing if we could duplicate. And we realized that with the energy of Occupy, with so many people willing to donate their time and to be involved in a revolutionary experiment, that we could probably get people to sign on to something like a free university. So a couple of us just decided, let's go for it. And the first big march we had after the eviction was we marched from City Hall, our former encampment, to Independence Mall, and then had a big rally right there on the lawn outside of Independence Hall. And we announced that we decided to start a free university working group, and anybody was welcome to join. So the next meeting, we called a meeting, announced it over email, and had about 30 people show up at 9 o'clock at night after the Occupy Philly General Assembly, and that was we all considered that a really good turnout for 9 o'clock at night in the cafe in Philadelphia. So from there, it only grew. The listserv is up to about 100 people who are actively involved, who have expressed interest, at least, in being involved in the working group. Now, for those of you who aren't really familiar with the way Occupy functions, there is a General Assembly that's the main decision-making body. That's the group that gets together, and everybody's they're making decisions by consensus as much as possible. You've seen people twinkling their fingers like this or like that, and using the people's mic when there are too many people. That's shouting and having it echo around. Anybody not familiar with what I'm talking about with the Occupy General Assembly? Perfect. So,
can you explain that?
Yeah, this just means you agree, and this means you disagree with what someone's saying. But that way, you don't have to interrupt them with applause or be rude and boo them or anything like that. We also go like this if we want the person to wrap up if they've been talking too long, and there's a few other hand signals that get used. But so we have working groups. Most Occupy groups have working groups as well that work on individual projects or concepts. The food working group is a group. We have a labor working group that's one of our most active groups, and a number of other groups. So the Free University Working Group set up a couple months ago after the encampment ended, and we really started getting a lot of interest and started talking with each other to develop a mission and a concept for what we were planning to do, what we intended to do. And the basic idea was that education is a human right, and everybody should have access to it. That was the fundamental premise we began from. And after we had our first few meetings, it became clear that there was a lot of energy to start some classes, and a couple classes got started right away. We have two that already are underway. One is a computer programming class that originally started in a warehouse in a neighborhood called Kensington in North Philly, and another one started a few weeks ago. It's called Revolution imaginary narrative, the poetics of power. And that's taught by a former St. Joseph's professor, a really great guy named Jacob Russell, who's been one of our active facilitators in Occupy Philly. He's a poet and a really wise man, and we're incredibly glad that he's willing to share his